everyone, this is Connor Kerrigan for CG Tuts Plus, and today we're going to be learning how to create a shadow catching layer in Cinema 4D, so that way we can later composite into After Effects. So let's get started. First thing we do is we jump into Cinema 4D here, and I have a comp with a camera in it, and this is from 3D tracking software, and she's just got the animated camera kind of going around there. And I've already set it up so that the ground plane here is where our ground plane is going to be in our live action footage. So let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to do is create our model or our something that we're going to put in the scene, and for this we're just going to use some 3D text. So we're going to create some text. We're going to scale it down, alright, quite a bit. Go into the text object tab, and we're going to type in CG Tuts and plus. And then we are going to move it over a bit, and we're going to add a extrude NURBS, and we're going to drop the text right into it. Okay. Now we're going to go into the extrude NURBS object tab, and we're going to bring the movement down a bit on the z-axis, maybe 10, maybe a little bit smaller. Alright, that looks good. We're going to go down the comp here so we can kind of see our text a little bit better. Let's go down a bit further here. Alright. Yeah. Alright, right about there looks good. Now, we are going to want to create our background so we can actually see our live action footage and we're not just kind of guessing where we're putting this. To do that, we're going to go into our environment objects, and we're going to select background. Now nothing's going to happen because we need to create a material for the background. So we're going to double click the materials here, and then we're going to double click on that specific material, and then we can just click on this texture bar, and we're going to select the video clip that we're going to be using as our background. I'm going to select mine. No, I don't want to add it to the document search path, and give it a second. Okay. Now we can uncheck specular, and we're good. We're going to drop that straight onto our background. And there she is. It's going to be the video playing through. And now we can really place this where we want to. I'm going to raise this, I'm going to raise the extrude NURBS off the street a bit, just like that. And now we're going to create a texture for our logo. And double click back to materials, and double click on the material. I'm going to make it sort of a kind of red, purple-y, pale kind of color, something like that. And then I'm going to go to reflection here and check that on, and just bring the brightness down. Now we're going to drop that material straight onto our logo. And we're going to render out here. Alright, now you see where's the reflection. And the reason that there's no reflection is because there's nothing for it to reflect. So in order to get the reflections, we need to add in something that it can reflect off of. Now, to do that, we're going to go into our environment objects and create a sky. The sky is essentially a giant sphere around our whole Cinema 4D world. And we're going to drop the material we use for our background straight onto the sky. Now, if we render out, we see we have the reflections on our text, but we have this giant sphere. To get rid of that, we're going to right-click on the sky, go to Cinema 4D tags, and compositing. And in the compositing tag here, we're going to uncheck Scene by Camera, and that'll get rid of it. Now, if we render, we see that we have our reflections, text is sitting on the street pretty nicely, and everything is looking pretty awesome. One thing that we are missing is the shadows. And I personally like to composite in After Effects. I don't like to create the video and all that straight in here. I like to have a separate layer for just the text that I can drop in, and then a separate layer for the shadows that I can drop in with the alpha and everything. Now, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do this in Cinema 4D. I know it's a lot easier in some other programs. But here's what I found. What we're going to do is create a plane. And the next thing we're going to do is create a light. We're going to move the light up, maybe move it back a bit in Z space, maybe move it over a bit that way. Let's see. Now we see, again, no shadows. What we need to do is go into our light settings and go to shadow, and its default set to none, but we want that to be shadow map soft. Now if we render it out, we see these, we have these nice long shadows. I'm actually going to move this up a bit. I don't like how long they are, so I'm going to go to the coordinates here for the light and just move it up a bit. That's better. Now we can tell that this text is kind of floating off the plane. But if we were to render this, we would just be rendering out this plane that this is sitting on, and the alpha channel would not work. So, unfortunately, this is kind of a pain in the butt, but it is definitely worth it. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our render settings and make sure all your outputs are right. You're probably going to have to set up the from and the to here. I'm going to make it from 0 to 324. And sure everything's right. My frame rate, 29.97. This is just all, things to set up. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're not going to really change very much in here. We're just going to, set up our document search path. I'll call it tutorial, or no, I'll call it CG Tuts Plus, and I'll save that to the desktop. I'm going to make it a QuickTime movie, and I'll just select one of these, and make sure you check on the alpha channel. That's important. Now, once you have all that done, you can just exit that and hit the render. Excuse me. Before we render it, we're gonna have to do something here. We're gonna turn off our plane. We can go ahead and delete our background, and now we're good to render. Alright, so we can hit the render button. Yes. And you see now we're rendering out. And this is just going to render out the text with a nice alpha channel. Everything's going to be keyed out nicely. We see we have great reflections on the text here. And that's what we want. So now I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to show you the second part here. Here's how to get the shadows. We go into our render settings. We go to multipass and we check that on. And then we go into multipass here and we add a shadow. Now we go into our save options, uncheck save the regular image, make sure we check on save the multipass image, and save it as shadow layer. And save. I'll save it again as a QuickTime movie, 8 bits. You can click on straight alpha if you like. I don't think it really makes a difference. Now we need to turn back on our plane, and we're going to right click on our extrude nerves, go to Cinema 4D tags and compositing, and we're going to uncheck scene by camera. And everything looks good. We're going to hit the render button here. And you see it's just going to render out the shadows now on this plane. That's perfect. That's what we want it to do. It will turn out right in your final file, even though it doesn't look right while it's rendering. Okay, and we're going to hop into After Effects now and get to compositing. Okay, so now it's time to composite into After Effects. So we're going to drag our clip into the comp window, and then I'll create a new composition with our video in it. And I'm going to drag the work area down quite a bit because I only rendered out a few frames from Cinema 4D. I'm going to right click and trim comp to work area. Now I'm going to drag in our CG Tuts Plus logo. And we see we have the nice logo with all the reflections and everything applied to it. Looks beautiful. Now we're going to drag in our shadow layer. And we're going to put that in between the two layers that we already have. Now we see we have all this white around it. And to get rid of that, we're going to toggle switches of modes and change the transfer mode to multiply, and that gets rid of all of the white, and we just have the shadows. Now, if you can see when I scrub through it here also that everything does match up perfectly to our scene because I had the camera matching, so that looks nice. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a simple choker to our logo layer. Now here's why we do this. When it's very hard to notice, but when you export from Cinema 4D, there's a little black edge around the pixels where the anti-alias, and you can see it right there on the edge. It's not really noticeable, but it does take away from it where you can it doesn't look right. The eye can tell it's not really there. So just to apply a simple choker to get rid of that. So I'm gonna grab a simple choker and add that to our logo layer, and I'm gonna bring it up to 1, just something small to get rid of that. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to apply a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to add that. And I'm going to apply a little color correction, so I'm going to add a tint to desaturate it. And then I'm also going to add a curve to add some different colors to tie the whole thing together. I'm going to bring the tint amount down to about 20, and I'm going to play with the RGB here and get a little bit of a contrast curve, which looks nice. I'm going to go to the red channel and bring that down a bit. And that looks pretty good. Just subtle things like that can really enhance your footage. It's just pretty much taste. I like it. You may not. You might want to make this whole thing like red and like a fantasy. Now that's not my style, but you should, whatever. I'm not loving the shadows, so looking a bit too dark. I'm trying to match it with the shadows in the background. That's a bit too light. Maybe about 80%. Let's go up a little bit more. Yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. Yeah, I like that. So, okay, everything matches up. Everything looks good. It's a nice, clean composition. And that is how you do it right there, folks. So, you're welcome. You're welcome. No, thanks for watching. I hope you liked it. Hope you learned something. And again, I'm Connor Kerrigan for CG Tuts Plus. Leave the comments. See ya.